In the distance looms the final stop of our journey, and at last Napoleon Bonaparte, our very large champion, will have his chance to rule the world. All he needs to do is conquer a few meager plebeians so that we can at last track down a supposedly intelligent illithid interloper and use its powers to dominate everyone. Of course, along the way we'll get revenge on all those who've wronged us, make a few of them kiss the bottom of our shoes, obliterate the others with the sheer power of our throwing arm, and absolutely crush the hopes of all those who get in our way. Can it be done? Well, we got one way to find out. On to the video. Our journey continues as our barbarous behemoth finds himself towering over our soon-to-be capital city of Baldur's Gate, just one sleep away. As Napoleon Bonaparte finds himself wistfully imagining ruling the world, our dream visitor starts panicking while a portal to the astral plane pops open with the Gith assailants flying out. We're sure it'd be fun to break them apart, but we've got places to be, so we use our mad hops to zip right past them into the portal, arriving just in time to see them bash their way through the defensive barrier that protects our anti-illithid source. So we down a bloodless elixir and jump into combat with friendly intellect devourers on our side to get to work. Losing out on sleep gets Napoleon fuming and dealing a decent chunk to one of the Gith, who proceed to go to town on these poor intellect devourers. Either way, with a few good hits and a lucky critical hit back on our turn, we're able to eviscerate these angry alien attackers. Heading deeper in, we find a mysterious illithid ally named the Emperor getting their rocks rumbled by the Gith as they no doubt fight to free the imprisoned true source of our protection. Indeed, the Mind Flayer reveals they are our dream visitor and our suspicions were correct. We're not a fan of being manipulated like this and we'll get our revenge, but for now we don't have a choice, so we jump into combat just in time to watch our brainiac buddies get blasted. This whole situation really grinds Napoleon's gears and we just want to slam some bodies around, even using a speed potion to get a bit more move speed so we can yeet one into the void. The last of the intellect devourers gets taken out. The Emperor wastes his turn by using domination on someone who has stillness of mind that breaks them out of it, and we get blasted just a wee bit. Back up to us and we're able to yeet their leader into the abyss as well, jump up to another poor soul who accepts his fate with the sort of morbid defeatism Napoleon inspires in his foes, and with only one foe left, we're very unconcerned. The poor soul can't do a darn thing as we show him just how mighty our rage can get. As the Gith Prince Orpheus is secure once more, the Emperor launches into a tirade about his backstory to make himself seem more sympathetic, but we're not paying attention since we're already planning revenge for his earlier manipulations. And thinking about level 9, which boosts our proficiency bonus to +4 and gives brutal critical, an ability that makes it so when we crit we roll an extra damage die. Quite handy indeed. Well, it would be, but it only applies to melee, and we're more of a thrower, so it's actually pretty much useless. Those sweet dreams of revenge whisk us away to a well-earned sleep. In the morning, we head into the outskirts of the city where we're approached by a child, but Napoleon isn't much of a kid person, they're just so weirdly small, you know? We are, however, a fan of Ferg Draugr, a money-smart entrepreneur in Rivington who sells us the Hellrider Longbow, which is basically just an improvement of our current bow since this gives +3 to initiative instead of +1. And here's a big known fact for you, Napoleon is also a fan of the circus, mainly because he can buy a statue of himself here for the low price of 5,000 gold, though it's a little on the small side. Later that evening, we find it waiting for us in our camp, granting Sweetstone features, a permanent buff that acts as Bless, giving a 1d4 boost to attacks and saving throws. When we try and get into the city proper the next day, the guards are less than welcoming, and for some reason even less so when we threaten them to let us pass, which really annoys our champion. These enemies die relatively quickly, though they do land the odd hit here and there. It's never for a lot of damage, the only one who's a little scary is the Steel Watcher, but we can always heal up easy peasy. Since there's no real danger, we're just booting people off of roofs, throwing folks off of roofs, and even slamming them into local civilians that just have that look of being dog haters. As you can see, it is a pretty easy fight since they all do physical damage, especially once we blow up the Steel Watcher, then pick off the few stragglers that remain. Of course, nothing can be that easy since Gortash has decided to coronate himself in the middle middle of the only road leading into the city, and as such the place is closed. But things are only really closed if the guards are alive. This fight is a little bit scarier than the last since there's 3 watchers this time, but still not so bad that we can't patch ourselves up thanks to our Periap. Admittedly, we don't do much damage to them, however the regular guards are easy enough to clean out. And from here it's a straightforward, if not rather slow process of whittling them down bit by bit until they decide to do us both a favor and speed things up one by one. Unfortunately, the true foe shows up after we take a nap. That child from earlier wants to stay with us, but Napoleon tries his best to make it clear how he feels about that. Either way, with the guards gone, we're able to head inside Worm's Rock Fortress and meet Gortash properly, who proposes we work together to take out Orin and rule the Absolute, and while we're not one for sharing, we are happy to abuse this fool's trust for now. After sticking around briefly to see old Gordy get coronated, we gain entrance into the city proper, where we have the pleasure of meeting Gloomy Fentonson, who sells us the Armour of Agility, 17 AC medium armor that for our purposes just grants a +2 to all of our saving throws. Speaking of boost to our saving throws, we also swing by the Stormshore Tabernacle and make a hefty donation to TLoZ, the storm god of fury and destruction, who sees our cause is righteous and gives Anointed in Splendor for another +2 to all our saving throws, meaning even our not very good saves are now pretty dang solid. As we're looking around the city though, the stench of a corpse distracts us and we stumble our way into a Bhaalist murder scene, our first clue to finding Orin, complete with a list of future victims. But while we're tracking down where to go, we wander into an alley with a half-wit half-orc that thinks threatening us is gonna go well for him. Spoiler alert, it does not go well for him. Nor is it a particularly pleasant pastime for his cronies either, who mostly do physical damage, and as such we're never too worried as we use the rooftops to our advantage to crush them from on high, before going as low as Napoleon can go, which is not very low, to stomp them to bits. Turns out they were guarding the entrance to a place called the Guild Hall, in which the bartender sells a bit of lightning in a bottle called Terrazul, basically a 2-turn speed potion that doesn't take a bonus action to consume. Then we're back on the trail at a wine tasting with a dwarven wannabe unholy assassin trying to poison the locals. To assert our dominance over the short stack, we down the poison willingly, certain that our immaculate bod will be able to resist it. Our immaculate bod fails to resist it as the cowardly assassin teleports away, leaving us paralyzed with a bunch of his lackeys around to finish the job. However, even with Napoleon unable to move a muscle, they're still incapable of bloodying our champion. Their incompetence really gets our blood boiling, and we decide to give them an up-close reenactment of what it's like to be inside a wrestling ring with a bulldozer, mainly just to flex on them and prove that what they failed to do with weapons to a paralyzed man, we can do completely unarmed to a whole group of moving combatants. And boy, do we flex on them. Once more though, when we go to nap off the poison, this little brat is waiting for us and instantly begs us not to suplex them. We settle for tossing their food to start, and before we can do it to the kid too, they reveal themselves to be Orin, explaining how wickedly they've dogged us this whole time. She threatens to nix the real kid for good unless we bring her Gortash's netherstone, which just makes us more certain in our decision to go for her first. Orin is unsettled by this so much that she decides to just dip and hide in her temple. Naturally, the next morning we continue the hunt with renewed fervor, tracking the assassin to lure down to his next victim and catching him in the act. Of course, sneaking isn't really Napoleon's forte, so we decide to make our presence known, and a proper showdown between the two of us finally kicks off. The coward unfortunately goes invisible before we can do anything to him, which really lights Napoleon's fuse, leading to him taking his anger out on the lackeys again, one of whom decides to use a darkness arrow on us, which causes the others to kinda just wander about the store since they're afraid of the dark. Delore tries to poison us again, to no avail, but now that we can actually see him, you know we gotta show this asinine assassin who's boss. When it's back on the enemy's turns, they continue to provide us cover, and we actually do take some damage from the little fellow's sneak attack, and he heals up. How rude. On our next turn, we make it clear that healing up is really more our thing after dealing some nice hefty hits to keep up the pressure. It's become pretty clear that this is another foe that just can't make it through our healing and damage reduction, especially since his speed potion expires, leaving him lethargic, and leaving us free to knock his HP down next to nothing. Unfortunately, Fortunately, the cops see what's going on through the window, but we do at least have the pleasure of stomping Baldur to death before they can interrupt, alongside a few of the goons too. They are on our side as well, so the real unfortunate part of it is that we just have to watch them bumble about as they try and figure out how to get inside. And Napoleon decides once he's in power, he'll implement an IQ requirement for the local police. Even once the guards are alerted, we're still left having to clean up every single baddie in the place. Off of Baldur's corpse, we find the next clue leading to a place called the Murder Tribunal alongside a password to access it. Not to mention, we also managed to reach level 10, giving Mighty Impel, which is essentially a bonus action throw that can only be done while we're raging, has a set distance regardless of weight, and only affects medium or smaller creatures. Following the directions on the note we picked up leads us to Servak Anchev, a Bhaalist conqueror who once threatened the city in a time-long past and now the overseer of the Murder Tribunal. He conjures up a spirit of someone we definitely did not kill and then asks us to tell him how we got it done. I don't know why he couldn't have just conjured up one of our actual victims, but we won't let him think we're lacking in the murder department, so we just fib our way through it. Naturally, Servak is amazed by our capabilities, asking us to kill a celestial right in front of him to prove we're the conqueror we say we are. Then we take a quick bath in this big old pool of blood, and apparently all this makes us an unholy assassin of Baal, which, yeah, totally was Napoleon's intentions. More importantly though, we also gain access to Baal's temple, where Orin is cowering in fear. But before we get going there, we talk to a Bazigal who sells us the Bhaalist Armour, 14 AC light armor that gives a +2 to initiative and Aura of Murder, which is an aptly named 3-meter aura that applies vulnerability to piercing to all enemies in it, dramatically increasing our damage to those affected. However, it's nowhere near as good defensively compared to our current armor, so we'll be using it interchangeably when we don't care about getting hit. And of course, now that we've got all the gear we'll be needing for the journey to come, we put on our conquering colors and get a haircut to match. Now all those who hear Napoleon's massive footfalls coming will surely quake in fear. Speaking of folks quaking in fear, along our way to Orin we stumble across Volothap Gadarm, the fool who took our eye, in the middle of being lynched, even begging for our help. Of course, Volo is ours to deal with, so we jump into the fight, getting mad over the sheer audacity of these people stealing our revenge. First thing we do is free Volo with a well-placed arrow, followed by yeeting folks into the convenient nearby river. The enemies, for their part, barely do anything to us, even though we're not using our defensive armor, just by sheer virtue of our rage protecting us. So when it's back to us, we're free to continue the old yeetin' machine to send these stinking sewer dwellers to a much needed bath, while the camera does its best to ensure we don't see any of it. To mix things up next round, instead of just throwing people, we also throw our weapon a little bit, before realizing people are just more fun to throw. Volo celebrates a little too early, and this time, before he can get away, we make it clear he's to stay at our camp forever as Napoleon's manservant. Proving that he wants to be useful, he even gives a book about Orin's Slayer form, granting Slayer knowledge, making it easier for us when we get around to fighting her. Good timing too, because now is that time. As we approach, she tries to threaten the kid to get to us, but we really don't care and don't know why she's convinced that we do. Her technique is sloppy enough to make Napoleon flinch in embarrassment though. At last she turns into her Slayer form and we can get to business. Time to show her why she was right to stay hidden. And we get stunned by a goon, meaning we can't work around Baal's edict that requires us to kill someone lest we die instantly. Right, okay, let's do this one again. This time we're jumping straight next to her with heavy armor on and a Cloud Giant elixir, setting our strength to 27. Immediately we get raging, then we whack her point blank to trigger her legendary retaliation, since only that or Baal's edict can trigger in a round. And of course prioritize taking out the Death's Head that can stun us, who even tries to, but this time we succeed the save. They do wail on us too, doing a bit of damage, as does Orin, and while each individual hit doesn't do a ton, all the damage does add up. To make things worse, the ritual casters surrounding us ensure her unstoppable stacks get refreshed each round. This next round is more or less a repeat of last time, with the only real difference being we heal up instead of raging, and Orin misses more attacks thankfully. Since the Death's Head no longer has unstoppable stacks on Napoleon's following turn, we just toss them hard enough to shatter their spine, trade a few tickles with with Orin as per usual and continue the routine of healing. We get a bit of a reprieve from the senseless Slayer as she kinda just screams, and the sole remaining goon uses a special cloud of daggers that I had no idea they could cast. But it doesn't last long since we give them a similar treatment to their deceased buddy. From here, we just get trading blows with this tiny rodent-sized Slayer over and over, sometimes getting to low health, but we can always just double heal if need be. The refreshing unstoppable stacks slow things down a tad, but for some reason every now and then a hit will ignore them and do full damage. Not that I'm one to look a Gift Slayer in the mouth. Rinse and repeat, taking brutal blows and healing and trading more brutal blows, raging again when needed of course, and eventually, big emphasis on eventually, we crush Orin underfoot for good, causing all of the ritual casting cowards to finally take a stand, but we give him a booting so memorable that the next Bhaalist to occupy this temple are sure to put in some OSHA certified railings. Once they're out of the way, Orin dies groveling at our feet, where all our enemies do, and we get the second netherstone in our collection, all we really need since the gibbering Gortash will freely add his 1 to our 2. Of course, before we rule the world, we want to make sure we've got a nice palace to live in, so we head into the slightly spooky Sar Palace. The owner is nowhere to be found, but his staff are easy to negotiate with. We even find a rotting corpse in one room that has us thinking the lord of the house might have peculiar taste. We do find a cool book behind it though, and after disintegrating a skeleton with our foot, also a unique looking ring. And more importantly, we find a chest with the Helmet of Grit inside of it, a helmet that gives +1 to our dex saves, and when we have 50% or less HP, we get an extra bonus action. Pretty handy since we burn through our bonus actions for raging, stomping, throwing, and healing, especially at low health. With said ring and book, we're able to pop open the ballroom doors, only to find out that the lord of the house does indeed have peculiar taste. A fight kicks off, and finding squatters in our soon-to-be palace really ticks Napoleon off with his first bonus action since he's half health. Then our second one is used to start wailing on the werewolf till we make him a wuzzwolf. The manifold menagerie surrounding us bites and scratches and nips at us in return, doing barely any damage. Since we're not in danger, we simply lay into them over the course of the fight, making sure we don't heal over half health so we can kill them all even faster with extra stomps. All this grants enough XP to reach level 11, and with it we get Relentless Rage, meaning once per short rest, if we were to hit 0 HP while raging, we instead healed 1. Continuing on, we head into the basement, which thankfully has a Napoleon-sized elevator leading into it. Down here in the distance, we see the master of the house doing some sort of vampiric ritual, so we go in with our defensive armor, a necrotic resistance elixir, and a flying potion. He's not too receptive of the idea of us killing him and taking his palace, so a fight kicks off. Cazador goes first and immediately blights us, dealing a ton of damage even with resistance and a save, since his ritual gives 1d10 extra necrotic damage per ritual source, of which there's 7. The initial damage sends Napoleon flying into a rage, one fueled by speed potions, and we take that flying part literally as we zip over to this creepy looking zombie named Astarion. Then we heal using the extra bonus action he gives us, turn him into a pile of ashes with the sheer force of our throw, and stuff him in our pockets so Cazador can't resurrect him, which for some reason doesn't stop that part of the ritual, but does prevent Kazi from ascending like he wants to. Most of the Halloween horde tries to surround us, but Chatterteeth decides to put himself on our hit list by trying to knock us to sleep. Oh, and Cazador just turns into a mistball, no doubt cause he's terrified of us. So we clear some space to get next to Chatterteeth, show him the wonders of our old friend Gravity, and get thinning down the horde surrounding us, and fly over to this ritual circle which gives us its benefits while on top of it, including passive healing. The goons continue to not do much at all, but Cazador actually moves closer, blighting us and getting us into his necrotic mist aura, which deals the same damage that we now passively heal. Even on the round our speed potion expires, the baddies simply do not do enough damage to so much as activate our helmet. So long as we're on this circle, we are pretty dang safe. As such, the basic strategy is just to blow up all the cronies littering the battlefield, often bludgeoning them to death with each other to spice things up, so that eventually it's a 1v1 against Senor Sar. Once it is, he uses all the spell slots in his arsenal to do just anything meaningful to us to absolutely no effect. After he gives up on that, his melee attacks are even sadder to see, so much for a vampire lord. Cazador
clearly learns his place as the fight goes on, since sometimes he doesn't even take a turn, he just gives up. I mean, if I had the unfortunate fate of fighting our tremendous tyrant, I would too. R.I.P. Cazador, thanks for the palace, bozo. Oh, and we take the chance to snap his staff so the immortal prisoners in this place will be trapped forever. Gotta have something interesting to show the guests, you know? After a brief moment to enjoy our new house, we get to meeting our neighbors and find the House of Grief, wherein the desk lady has the audacity to imply Napoleon needs therapy. Why, we'll prove her wrong. Unfortunately, they want us to pay, and the guard isn't intimidated into letting us in for free, really boiling Napoleon's blood. I mean, can you believe they think he needs therapy? The worst part is the therapist doesn't even show up once we're in the room. All that happens is a button opening a door to a hidden basement appears. Once we descend into the depths, instead of a licensed professional, we find Frederick. We don't much care for Frederick, and since this is clearly a Sharan sanctuary judging by the decor, we make sure we have the Steelwatch helmet on to prevent blindness. A good thing, because in the next room there's a sea of Sharans waiting for us, led by one Viconia DeVere. This lack of therapy really sends Napoleon into a rage, whereupon he gets working on the poor sod who happens to be closest. The enemies, for their part, were aura farming a little too far away, so they all teleport and dash their way closer to us. We continue the trend of whacking whoever pops up closest to us like a game of Whack-a-Sharan before kiting them deeper in. Napoleon does get hit every now and then in return, but never for a lot of damage thanks to a necrotic resistance elixir. Not to mention, most of the attacks simply miss. Thankfully, we can just kind of rinse and repeat over and over since this hallway is long enough to keep folks dashing. The people who do get close can barely hit, and the ones who do barely do any damage. Our AoE damage is more than a little lacking, but our single target certainly is not, and if need be, we can always heal up. And things do indeed speed up by a ton once we get to these nice convenient chasms ripe for yeeting people into. Of course, people are always more fun to yeet into each other, something Viconia finds out firsthand, and the last of her goons each go down in a single hit moments later. Well, we do miss out on the wonders of CBT, that's cognitive behavioral therapy, you freaks. We do get Viconia's Walking Fortress, a +3 AC shield that gives advantage on saves against spells and spell attacks disadvantage against us, alongside a damaging shield bash and the ability to reflect projectiles for a few turns, amongst other things. Also in here we find a Sharan Mirror of Loss, which after making a check that we have advantage in because we are a Dark Justiciar, we're able to sacrifice some bad memories to it in return for a General's memories, giving a permanent +2 to our strength. Any negatives received from sacrificing our memories are solved by taking a long rest. There is one more thing we want to do before taking on the brain though, and that's break into the local Diabolist's house, smash our way into looting everything that isn't nailed down, and randomly throw them onto this infernal circle until a portal to Raphael's House of Hope opens up at last. Unfortunately, when Napoleon enters, he's greeted by the titular Hope, a deranged dwarf that Raphael keeps imprisoned as befitting a short folk. To rain on our parade even more, we can't get in unless we let her disguise us first and promise to free her. As soon as we're granted the ability to get exploring, we head to the archives and find a hammer that can break any chains, no doubt including the ones the Emperor has put on Orpheus. It does have a magical barrier protecting it at the moment, but that doesn't mean we can't pick up everything else that isn't nailed down, including the Amulet of Greater Health, which sets our con score up to 23, drastically increasing our HP and giving advantage on all con saving throws. Of course, now that our disguise has been ruined, we have to fight, but all this sneaking around has been getting on our nerves anyways. Booting boars has never been more beautiful, eliminating imps never more inspiring, and slaying spheres that can't even get through doorways never more satisfying. Further into the house, we find a weird little devilish deviant disguised as Raphael himself and a small hellish horde accompanying him. The horde is easy to kill, but one member picks up a lightning jabber that I forgot to bind, even swinging it at us. So we take out our rage on the fake Raphael, but when we kill the jabber thief, they blow up, taking our beloved weapon with them. Good thing we've got a backup. At the very least, it died for a good cause as we grabbed the key from the fake Rafi needed to open up a safe in his boudoir, wherein we find the password to grab the Orphic hammer. And we get to take a quick bath to gain all the benefits of a long rest as often as we would like. We mourn the loss of our old friend Jabber 1 as any sane person who doesn't need therapy would, by slaughtering all the hosts of hell available to us. Upon mostly completing cleaning out the house, we managed to reach our final level up, getting with it one last rage charge and the last feat, Tough, increasing our HP maximum by 2 for each level we have, meaning we get 24 more HP from this feat alone. With the amulet, this makes our final total a gigantuous 185, as suits such a magnanimous man. Then we take a quick detour to yoink the hammer, and mainly to piss off Raphael, get freeing hope from her jailers. The imps are easy to kill, going down in one hit each. The spectators, for their part, are a little bit frightening, but not as frightening as trying to throw a weapon through an open doorway in this game. Either way, once the doors are no longer a concern, neither are the spectators. Thanks to Aura of Murder granting them vulnerability, they get absolutely chunked before their legendary actions can even trigger. Once the stragglers are wrangled, we pop open Hope's handcuffs and think about how best to weaponize her. Before we go to meet Raphael, we give Hope a vigilance elixir and throw on the Nair Mister just in case we need its help to try to leave the house with a Cloud Giant elixir and Speed Pod active. Right on cue, Raphael shows up to get his booty kicked, alongside another disgusting dwarf and Jurgir, the Orthon, who clearly wasn't satisfied with getting rumbled just the one time. As if digging his grave even deeper, the little man also calls us an insect, so we're very happy as a long-awaited fight kicks off. Jurgir does bugger all on his turn, the Cambions do their darndest to tickle us, and we show him they've only ticked us off. Followed by blasting the Orthon to bits with a measly 2 attacks, healing up with a potion, and flying right next to this conveniently Raphael-shaped pit. Hope on her turn banishes one of the Cambions to God knows where, then with a speed pot we weaponize her just as planned, resulting in Raphael's Hope finally being put to rest for good. However, almost like he can sense our intentions with this pit, the master of the house simply chows down on some souls, sending his Cambions at us instead. So we make it clear it'll take more than Cambion cronies to deal with us, activate our reflective shell, and refresh our speed potion too. Finally, Raphael starts inching a tad closer bit by bit after summoning a goon, but still not close enough to help protect these winged wussies, who might as well be healing us for all the damage they deal. But at last, our bait works and the trap is ready to be sprung. Napoleon flies down next to Raphael and we crush him underfoot, almost like he's the insect. And you already know none of these goons are posing any threat at all. They're just the cherry on top of a Raphael sundae. Not all good things can last though. When we go to tell Gortash we're ready to conquer the brain, he turns on us before we can turn on him, demanding we hand over the stones. That is, until we tell him we'd rather throw down than hand them over, at which point the slimy statesman reveals he was just having a guffaw and is ready to join us in the sewers where the brain awaits. And boy, oh boy, does the brain await. It's almost grown as large as Napoleon himself. And when it realizes it's not quite up to snuff in the real world, it pulls us into its psyche where it cheats to loom over us. Since it's powering up, we use these stones to do, literally nothing. Well, that's not good. Gortash even yoinks them from us, so we get ready to backstab him to steal them back just for the brain that beat us to the punch. Well, that's awfully handy. Now we can use the stones for real to, fail again. Oh dear. Before we can get hit by the old brain blast too, the Emperor shows up just in time, sending us flying through a portal to safety. Our future city does get a wee bit melted while we're regrouping, but we can fix that later. For now though, we take the opportunity to free Orpheus so we don't have to deal with this creepy squid man who keeps trying to tell us what to do. Orpheus unfortunately isn't much friendlier, but he at least acknowledges the fact that we are efficient at causing suffering whenever we want to. Arguably more importantly, he agrees to become a mind flayer himself in order to properly use the nether stones to subdue the brain so that we don't have to. With a hopefully less demanding ally at our side, we set out to the city just in time if we're to rule over anything at all. First, however, we have to fight our way through the high hall that's filled to the brim with a battalion of absolutists. AKA, we get to go to town on folks with our lightning jabber that remains, while Orpheus gets to have the real fun of using his illithid powers to completely crush them into paste with black holes. If Napoleon didn't have to give up his massive physique and handsome face to become one, he definitely would have taken up the chance. Although even with all this power, you still can't rely on small folk to get such a big job done. It's no surprise when the O-Man gets knocked unconscious. Luckily, we're here to clean up after his mess and get him back into fighting shape. Since that's the only real scare of the showdown. We simply have fun playing with our food a little bit longer before even these hardy folks get bulldozed. Next, we've got to zip our way to the top of this here tower to ensure we don't get shot by a nautiloid. After making it to the top, we get climbing the brainstalk, arriving at the same time the so-called Emperor does. All the better so we can watch as we dismantle his hopes. Starting off, we use a Dimension Door scroll with Orpheus to zip us both over to the crown, then a Misty Step scroll from Napoleon baits out any counterspells, followed by a Globe of Invulnerability to keep us nice and safe, inside of which Orpheus gets channeling the Netherstones, and we provide a cloud to hide in with a Darkness Arrow. Since these supposedly hyper-intelligent Mind Flayers lack object permanence, they kinda just mill about while we're in the darkness. Likewise, the legendary action from the crown just doesn't trigger, letting our channeling complete without any interruptions whatsoever. Once inside, Orpheus spams Fierce Perilous Stakes on Napoleon with each activation, giving 15 extra psychic damage and expanding our crit range by 5. So with 7 stacks of it, with our first throw we crush the brain psyche, with our second throw we shatter it, and with our third throw we conquer it, causing it to beg for mercy as it shrinks in on itself, proving we are indeed superior. Now, naturally, we can't have Orpheus getting in the way of our world domination, so before he can ruin our plans, we ruin him. Then we're free to use the brain's powers boosted by the Netherstones to wipe out all who could dare threaten our new empire, as Napoleon takes his rightful place above a world that he alone could burn. But he doesn't burn it, no, instead we descend to the people like the gracious ruler we are, encouraging them to kneel before us, and finally we get a proper life-size statue of us. Long live the Titanic tyrant Napoleon Bonaparte.
Savior of the world.
Thank you all so very much for watching. This was a fun one and is likely to be the last evil run we do for these class challenges, so I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, a special thanks to our Storyteller tier members, Okan, Mark Rainbow, Rat King, Lumina, Beltfed Joe, Chance Hine, El Guardia, Ramon Standalone, Witch Amy, and May.